It's 39 years ago that you started at Procter Gamble, right?
That's right.
Can you remember that very first day that you walked into one of the P&G offices?
Oh yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday. And you know, I remember. In fact, I was just at a strategy meeting in that same building about a week ago, and you know, I started in what was called the paper division at the time, which is our products are Charmin, Bounty, and Puffs, as well as Pampers, Loves, and Always. And I remember the first day because my boss, his name was Stan Boric, he said some things from the very beginning. He said, you know, we're a company that does the right thing, and we, you know, we do what's right, and it just stuck with me. It's just, you know, the values of our company were introduced to me on day one.
One of the great, let's say, indicators that I find to see to what extent people really embrace that multi-stakeholder agenda is look at, for example, town hall meetings. Like, do you talk only about consumers, only about, I know, growth and profit, only about purposeful work, etc.? Can you tell a little bit about how you try to balance? Because obviously it must be a balancing act, right?
Sure. You know, the way we balance, Frank, is we like to think about what we do as being a force for good and a force for growth. It's important that you do both, because as a company that has shareholders, as a public company, if you're a force for good without growth and value creation, then you're a philanthropy, and we're not a philanthropy. No. We're a for-profit business, but if you're a force for growth without any good, then consumers that we serve are increasingly viewing people like that or companies like that as mercenary. So you've got to do both, and that's the way we think about it. You can do good for obviously consumers first and foremost. Our job is to make their lives better every day with our household and personal care products and healthcare products. That's job one, and that makes a big difference in people's lives.
39 years ago, you were told on your very first day by your boss that you were, you know, that this was a purposeful business. I can tell you many of the people in our program do not work in companies where on their first day, especially 39 years ago, they would have been told that. They would have been told, you know, what is going to be the turnover and what's going to be the profit. So if you any advice for these leaders, these CMOs that work in a company that is really dominated by financial targets, mostly short term, what can you as a marketer do to push that agenda, to push that humanized growth agenda? Any advice from you?
You know, key advice for me would be to start with the consumers you serve, or whoever your constituents are. Start by understanding what they want. What's really interesting is today, 9 out of 10 consumers feel better about a brand if it supports a social or environmental cause. More than half of consumers now, and it's even higher than that, closer to 70+% among millennials and Gen Z. More than half, though, expect brands to take a stand, to make a difference, to do something for good for the environment or for equality.
Let's talk about interventions that you remember out of those 39 years that you feel really made a difference.
You know, the first one, which was, I would say, was just probably the most profound one for me personally, it was over 20 years ago when I was running our CoverGirl business. And that's why I'm in Baltimore. Baltimore was the headquarters of the CoverGirl business, and I moved here. And my wife Betsy and I and our three daughters, who are all under the age of 10, were at a spiritual ranch in Colorado. Well, and at this ranch, the head of this, at the very end of this, the spiritual leader of it, who was a minister, actually came up to me and said, you know, I hope you know the good you can do, because you're in business, and business will someday be the greatest force for good in the future. It won't be governments, it won't be clergy, it won't be, laws. It'll be business. So if you choose to do so, you can really do a lot of good.
You never make it about you.
No, no. And others will try to make it about you. And so, because it's just a natural, the way humans work. But if you can just try to never let that come, never read your own headlines, for example, and just focus on how you can help serve the people in your organization, you'll be able to deal with it more effectively.
How do you innovate yourself as a person? And so I don't mean per se in the skills, just as a person. How do you need to evolve to stay future-proof?
I adopted a mindset several years ago, because I'd been a CMO for a while, and I said, I got to keep fresh. And so the mindset was, I like pretended to fire myself every 18 months and then start over again. And the reason why I say that, and then I'd rehire myself, of course, or I'd pretend that I would get rehired. I don't want to be fired. But what that did, and why did I chose 18 months, because that's Moore's law, as you know, which is that computing power doubles every 18 months. So given the exponential changes that occur, I thought, okay, it better be every 18 months. Nice. So, but by firing yourself, what I noticed is when you come in fresh to a job, you are not encumbered by the past. You just look at where things are. You look at what's happened, you look at where things are, and you try to look at what's going. And so I said, that's a good mindset to have, because then I don't fall in love with whatever I worked on before. And I don't view that as being sacred.
Things like this, both, let's say, self-care, obviously, but even spirituality. Is that something that you bring into discussions with your teams, or do you feel that's a private affair?
I'm actually an easy crier, Frank. I mean, actually, I cry pretty easily, and I admit it. But you always feel a little weird about it, and then when people, but what you realize is people say, wow, you just showed you're a human. And that's part of the problem as a CMO. You're not viewed as a human in many cases. You're viewed as a machine. And so periodically that expression of humanness goes a long way.
I'm pulling out two things. One, it's not about you. The other is, don't forget you're human. It's interesting. They seem almost at odds, but they're not. I can totally see that. Well, I mean, you said earlier in the conversation that you rise every day with the idea of that you want to contribute and give. You certainly did in the past hour. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. You come across as a very, very human leader. And it's very clear that you don't make it about yourself, but that you are yourself.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you very much.
Really enjoyed it. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.